"An evil of the ancient world, it seemed, such as I have never seen before," said Aragorn. "It was both a shadow and a flame, strong and terrible." "It was a Balrog of Morgoth," said Legolas, "of all elf-banes the most deadly, save the one who sits in the Dark Tower." "Indeed, I saw upon the bridge that which haunts our darkest dreams. I saw Durin's bane," said Gimli in a low voice, and dread was in his eyes. Greetings and well met, my friends. Yoistin here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we will be taking another deeper look at the Balrogs from the Legendarium. This is a remake of one of my much older videos, and though I call it a remake, there will be much more information in this video than there was in the previous one. Thank you all for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. The Valraukar, or Balrogs, meaning demons of might in Sindarin, were creatures of the ancient world. They were originally Maiar, the same type of spirits that Gandalf and Sauron were. They were spirits of fire, and they were corrupted by Melkor, becoming beasts of fire and shadow, clad in smoke. They stood at least twice as tall as most men, if not taller, and it is debatable whether they had wings or not. The Balrogs may have had close relations to Húrin, the Maya who guided the sun. In the far elder days of the world, even before the children of Ilúvatar walked upon the earth, Melkor persuaded these Maiar to join his cause. Now, the exact number of Balrogs isn't quite clear in the Legendarium. Concerning this debate, many people always look to the Book of Lost Tales Part 2, and its commentary about the fall of Gondolin within. This story claims that 5 Balrogs were slain by Tuor's axe Dremberleg, and 3 by the sword of Ecthelion, and 2 score, or 40 Balrogs, were defeated by the warriors of Turgon's house. The Lost Road and other writings also mention an army of, quote, Balrogs 1,000, end quote. However, these ideas come from some of Tolkien's early writings that seem to have been more or less disregarded in the greater context of the Legendarium. Finally, according to Morgoth's ring, quote, "In the margin my father wrote, there should not be supposed more than, say, 3 or at most 7 ever existed," end quote. From what we see in the more canon parts of the Legendarium, such as the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings, this seems to be more accurate to the story Tolkien was writing. Concerning the battles such as Dagor Nuin Gileath, Nirnaeth Arnodiad, and the Fall of Gondolin, having about 7 Balrogs in the Legendarium makes the most sense to me. Orcs, goblins, Uruk-hai, and even trolls seem to be the more numerous and inexpensive units of Melkor, while Balrogs seem to be commanders and rare foes that are truly to be feared. Of the named Balrogs, there are 2 within canon, but 3 within the scope of Tolkien's writings. There is Durin's bane, the most famous who would fight Gandalf. There was also Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs in the First Age, and in one of Tolkien's early stories and revisions, the Lay of the Children of Húrin, Lungorthin, the Lord of Balrogs, is named. But it is possible that this was just an early name for Gothmog, or perhaps Lungorthin was just another Lord of Balrogs. Either way, his name does not appear in the final versions of the Silmarillion. Thus, Durin's bane and Gothmog are the only truly named Balrogs throughout the canon Legendarium. Anyway, now that we have discussed the descriptions, amount of Balrogs, and some of their names, let's discuss the history of the creatures. During the Years of the Trees, the Balrogs were already in service to the Dark Lord Melkor. They would first gather to Melkor in his fortress of Utumno, while the Valar lived in the light of the 2 trees far to the west. Eventually, the war for sake of the elves would commence, and in their haste to capture Melkor and destroy Utumno, the Valar did not hunt the Balrogs who fled Utumno to linger in the depths of an already leveled fortress of Angband. There the demons would await their master while he was held captive by the Valar. Eventually, the elves would awaken and go to Valinor, and the Balrogs remained in hiding. But sure as the evil in Melkor's heart, the Dark Lord would destroy the 2 trees and return to Beleriand and Middle-earth, coming towards Angband. His companion Ungoliant, however, demanded that Melkor, now named Morgoth by the elves, give up the Silmarils so that she may devour the gems of light. He refused, and as Ungoliant fettered him with her webs, the Dark Lord cried aloud, and his Balrogs heard. The demons came forth from Angband to help their master, and with their flame they freed him and drove Ungoliant into a retreat. They would have pursued the Great Spider, but Morgoth recalled his servants, and they all went to Angband to begin preparations for the dominion of Middle-earth. The Balrogs would next appear in the Dagor Nuin Gileath, or the Battle Under Stars, during the late Years of the Trees. After Feanor's forces had victory against Morgoth's orcs, Feanor and a small band of his elves pursued the few fleeing orcs into Ard-Galen, near Angband. Then Balrogs would come forth from the Thangorodrim, the volcanic mountains outside of Angband, and Feanor would be the last elf standing in the battle against them before he too was defeated by Gothmog, the Lord of the Balrogs. That would be the first, but not the last time that the elves would combat the Balrogs. For more on that battle, please check out our First Battles of Beleriand video, which I will link in the description and cards above. The Balrogs would then go back to Angband to await further conflicts with the Free Peoples. Such conflict would soon come, for after the death of Feanor, Morgoth would send an emissary to the elves to arrange a meeting. This meeting was supposed to be the surrender of Morgoth, but the elves knew better and brought a larger force than agreed upon to attack Morgoth's servants. But Morgoth did the same, and his side had Balrogs. The Balrogs would win the conflict, and Maethros, the eldest son of Feanor, would be taken by Morgoth's forces and eventually chained to a precipice upon the Thangorodrim, to one day be rescued by Fingon. However, Morgoth had now truly shown the strength and power of his Balrogs. The Balrogs would not be seen again until the First Age and Dagor Bragolok, the Battle of the Sudden Flame. Morgoth would break the elven siege upon his stronghold in, well, a sudden flame. With the flames and fumes from the Thangorodrim, as well as the fires of the Balrogs and Glaurung, the father of the dragons, the plains of Ar-Galan would be turned into the desert of Anfaglith, and the Balrogs would help push the elves and their allies among men back into a retreat. Some few years later, elves and men would fight in the Nirnaeth Arnodiad, or the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. Joined by the Union of Maethros, the Free Peoples would fight a losing battle against Morgoth's forces where, once again, the Balrogs appeared. They would be chief combatants in this conflict. Gothmog, the Lord of the Balrogs, made a wedge between the forces, driving Turgon and Húrin into the Fen of Sarek, and making High King Fingon fight by himself until the bitter end. The son of Fingulfin would fight Gothmog until another Balrog came from behind and issued a throng of fire around the Elven King. Thence Gothmog would hew Fingon and bring an end to the valiant elf. Gothmog would go on in the battle to capture Húrin, the father of Turin Turambar, after Húrin was buried under many of his slain foes. Gothmog would bind the warrior and bring him to Angband so that Morgoth could torture him for the location of Gondolin, which Húrin would never give. Morgoth would then put the curse upon Húrin's house that we see play out in the tale of the children of Húrin. Coming closer to the end of the First Age now, during the fall of Gondolin in 510 of the First Age, the Balrogs would be amongst the forces of Morgoth, wreaking havoc in the city. Some texts even say that the Balrogs came into the city riding upon the backs of the dragons of Glaurung's brood. Gothmog, the Lord of the Balrogs, would duel Ecthelion of the Fountain in the Square of the King, and they would bring an end to one another. Gothmog would knock the sword out of Ecthelion's hands, and the elf would ram his pointed helmet into Gothmog, knocking both the Balrog and elf into the waters of the fountain, drowning the two of them and quenching the final flames of Gothmog. Again, there are other versions of the Fall of Gondolin that have more Balrogs being slain, but I personally believe that they are not canon, rather they are fiction about the fiction. Anyway, the Fall of Gondolin would continue, and as Tur and Idril escaped the city with their son Eärendil and many other refugees, another Balrog watched the pass that the elves and man were taking. But hope was not lost, and Lord Glorfindel fought with the Balrog, allowing his friends to escape while he and the Balrog fought and fell from the pass, and were both slain. For more information on the Fall of Gondolin and the battles with the Balrogs during this time, I'll leave links to Part 1 and 2 of the story in the description and cards above. After the Fall of Gondolin, the remaining Balrogs would fight in the War of Wrath, and many would be defeated during that war. Those that were not slain would flee into the deep parts and roots of the earth, hiding and sleeping. After the war, the First Age would end, and there would be nothing concerning Balrogs to happen in the Second Age. Thus we come to the Third Age and the Balrog that we all know best. In the year 1980 of the Third Age, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm would mine too deep for Mithril and awaken a terror in the dark. It would slay King Durin VI and his son King Nain I. The beast would kill many of Durin's folk and drive the dwarves out of their home, and it was afterwards called Durin's Bane, or the Nameless Terror. Khazad-dûm would be renamed Moria, meaning the Black Pit in Sindarin. Eventually, orcs, goblins, and trolls would come to live in the Misty Mountains and in Moria, though it is unclear whether Sauron knew of Durin's Bane or even tried to ally himself with the creature. During the Battle of Azanul-Bizar in the War of the Dwarves and Orcs, Dane Ironfoot, after slaying Azog, would look beyond the Eastern Gate and know that Durin's Bane awaited the dwarves within Moria. The dwarves would not dare to face him until the world was changed and some other power came within Moria, but Balin's company would not take this to heart, and in 2989 of the Third Age, they would go within Moria where Durin's Bane yet resided, and the dwarves would meet their end within, from orc and beast alike. It is possible that the Balrog was one such beast. During the War of the Ring, the Fellowship of the Ring would journey through Moria, and the company would narrowly miss the creature of shadow in the chamber of Mazarbul, as the ceiling of the tomb of Balin would be collapsed by Durin's Bane. It would break a spell that Gandalf put on a door leading out of the chamber, and Durin's Bane would pursue the Fellowship to the bridge of Khazad-dûm. Gandalf would only then learn that Durin's Bane was actually a Balrog of Morgoth from the Elder Days, and he knew that the foe was beyond the strength of the Fellowship. Standing upon the bridge of Khazad-dûm, Gandalf confronted the Balrog, and before Aragorn and Boromir could help the wizard, he broke the bridge and the Balrog fell. With his whip of flame, he would grab at the wizard, bringing him to the edge of the broken bridge. Gandalf would fall to face his opponent in the depths of Moria. The wizard would pursue the Balrog through the foundations of stone, up the endless stair, and to the peak of Zirak-Zigil, and there, the wizard would bring an end to the Balrog, even at the cost of his own life. The whole conflict had lasted 10 days. Gandalf would return to the world just as Glorfindel did, if indeed he is the same elf from the First Age. But Durin's Bane would not, and he would be the last Balrog mentioned in Middle-earth's history. And so we come to the end of our tale about the Balrogs of Middle-earth. From the tales of the Balrogs, we see what ambition and sacrifice truly mean. Fëanor and Durin VI met their ends by Balrogs through blind ambition, but heroes such as Fingon, Ecthelion, Glorfindel, and Gandalf tragically sacrificed themselves for their friends and the greater good. We must never forget the heroes whose sacrifices allow for us to live in peace. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. Let me know your thoughts about the Balrogs in the comments below. I personally think that they're some of the most interesting and unique creatures of evil in Tolkien's works. Also, please check out our music channel, Facebook, Twitter merch, Loot Crate partnership, and for our podcasts and Discord server, please consider donating to our Patreon for just $1 a month. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today, and I'll see you all again next week with a video about what happens to each kindred in the afterlife. As always, everyone, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my friends.